Thank you for joining us. As we recover from the LA fires and the aftermath of everything that's happened, we're thinking about first responders. I'm being joined by Ashinee Reynolds, MFT, and life coach, and all those wonderful things that you do in the community. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us.
Of course. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So as we're thinking about first responders, I'm thinking about pastors. Are pastors first responders?
Absolutely. I think, pastors are often the first people a lot of people turn to outside of family when they need some assistance.
And so being a first responder, let's think of kind of the normal things that pastors are attending to, funerals, loss, existential crises, all the different things that we experience. But then something traumatic like the LA fires happen and members lose homes. What are the kinds of things that might trigger in a pastor, and what are some ways that we can kind of be looking out for signs of trauma?
Yeah, pastors are, near and dear to a lot of our hearts, especially because their line of who they are, they tend to be a little bit more empathetic, and they want to meet people, where they are and take these things on. So with that being said, when they're hearing things from members, and, oftentimes pastors visit homes and go into the communities, it could weigh a lot because it's not just, their immediate family, it's additional people. So taking on the extra emotional stress of others could have an impact on them emotionally as well as physically. Sometimes maybe there might be changes in their sleep. Maybe they'll get headaches. Maybe they'll feel more stressed than usual, more tired, more irritable. These are all kind of normal stress responses, but things to be mindful of because it could lead to burnout. And oftentimes, sadly, in the service profession, sometimes people wait too late to address those things, so to speak.
So you find that people are just kind of in survival mode, just going from one thing to the next, and kind of self-evaluation just kind of takes a back seat, right?
Absolutely, because for a lot of people in the service industry, their focus is like meeting the needs. So if this person needs me, I want to be there, I want to be here, and they go to all these different places. And one thing that could be helpful is by the end of the day, they might just need a break to pause and kind of process what they went through that day, because they probably just have taken it on without acknowledging that they've heard, very emotional and heavy things.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So let's talk about that. And let's say a pastor's listening and they're saying, wow, I haven't evaluated my day consistently, and I've been just in survival mode and in service mode. How would a pastor take steps to kind of evaluate, and what are some helpful tips to providing self-care?
Yeah, I would say one way is to start to be very intentional with that space for processing. So whether that looks like, come 6 p.m. or something like that, you've had a full day of talking to people and working with people and planning of like, okay, this is what I heard today. How am I feeling about these things? But really being intentional to process what they're going through, so it just doesn't compound and then, come out in different ways. And that could be the same with an intentional prayer time, and especially peer support. So there's something helpful about being in a group with colleagues or other pastors who might have similar experiences where you feel safe to share those things. So I would say those are a few ways that, you could start to unpack and not be overwhelmed by just taking it in, but not being able to process like people go to pastors to process. So it's really necessary and needed.
Sometimes in the pastoral role, we're always around people. We're in committees, we're in boards, we're in prayer meetings, we're leading the church. Sometimes we feel like we're around people, but most people in the church can't always relate to the things that pastors go through. So that community of support is really important, right? To be able to identify people who are primary caregivers in the pastoral field, and to gather with those kinds of people. That's important too, right? It can't just be anybody. It has to be people who understand kind of what they're going through, right?
Absolutely, because you'll have shared experiences most of the time. And with that, there's a comfort in understanding, hey, I'm actually not in this alone. And not only that, you'll start to, aside from praying for each other, you'll start to find similarities. And maybe, you did something that's very helpful for you that you could share with me and vice versa. And it's just a comfort of having that space provided where you could be vulnerable and like, it was really tough this week.
Yeah. And that's certainly something that all pastors can benefit from, is just developing or beginning a community of support that can help them long term. Are there other unexpected ways that pastors need to be alert and knowledgeable about as it relates to how they're processing, some heavy times?
Yeah, I would say this might sound odd, but I would say nutrition. So our pastors really need to be taken care of and, make sure they're eating well and healthy and balanced, things like that, the things that they can control. So, they're taken care of because they're providing so much care for others. And then also, exercising, whether that's in nature or a hobby, but these are just basic, but very vital reminders to take care of themselves in the ways that they can so they could show up their best for others, if that makes sense.
Excellent. Now, as pastors are going through life and ministry and just kind of being strained and pulled in different directions, what are some responses that might be common for pastors who are experiencing this kind of traumatic events?
Sure. I am actually going to share some things that the public health department really wants everyone to be mindful of, specifically pastors. So people are going to see it on the screen, and I'm just going to read some of these things out. So there's a column as far as thinking. Maybe you feel confused, or there's nightmares. You can't concentrate like normal. You're having problems identifying important tasks. Those are actually quite common after so much stress buildup. In the feeling area, maybe there's chest pain, difficulty breathing, dizziness, sweating, headaches, vision problems, chills, more anxiety than usual, guilt, denial, worry, irritability. As you guys could see, there is a long list of feelings that could come up. And then in our action column, maybe there's more withdrawal, anger, risk-taking. These are all things to be mindful of, and to also note that our common reactions after so much stress and seeing trauma secondhand.
Wow. So this whole list, it's talking about things I wouldn't have normally thought of, and certainly some of the things that I've been exemplifying in my own personal life. But you're saying these things are directly related to the kind of stress that we're experiencing.
Absolutely, especially for pastors, because they're seeing it multiple times, more than likely, when they're visiting homes and people are coming to them and telling them about their traumatic experiences. So it's very important to be mindful of these things that one might be experiencing and not knowing why.
So that's where self-care practices really, really come into the picture, right?
Absolutely. And it's kind of like putting a pause and saying, like, I have to take care of myself in order to take care of others, because the profession is essential. We need our pastors, and that could look in different ways aside from the groups that we mentioned, being intentional of getting together with other pastors, but enjoying hobbies. I know you mentioned photography, right?
That's right.
I know a lot of people who enjoy hiking and nature walks. Those are all ways that might seem simple, but spending time with yourself where you're not, having to care for others in those times. You're kind of filling up your cup, so to speak.
Excellent. Ash, you've given us some really, really helpful tips on how to process some of these heavy feelings and anxieties that we're experiencing. we're going to try to put those into practice. Are there other ways that people can reach out to you or follow up on some of this information?
Yes, please visit us at moderndaywellness.org. Again, that's moderndaywellness.org. And join our newsletter. That'll be great. But if you need extra support, that's where you can find us online.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.